If you're watching this video, your knitting pattern just told you to bind off in pattern, and you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Well, you probably just finished a row or round that had both knits and purls, like my 2x2 ribbing does here. And binding off in pattern simply means to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches during the bind off row. First, let me show you the bind off edge look you're probably already familiar with. This edge was bound off using knit stitches only, and the bind off edge is rolling to the front of the work. The chain of V's is very prominent, like a design element. Binding off in pattern creates a more subtle edge that blends better into the fabric. And you could do a knit only bind off in ribbing, for example, but that may not be the look that you're going for. So let me show you how to do what your pattern is telling you to do. Again, I'm working on a row of 2x2 ribbing, but this applies to any row with a combination of knit and purl stitches. Also, my first 3 stitches are knit stitches, so if your row begins with purl stitches, sit tight. We will get to purl stitches momentarily. So I'm going to begin by knitting my first 2 stitches. And then I'm going to pass the second stitch on the right needle over the first to bind off 1. Knit another stitch. And bind off another. So this is probably the bind off method you're familiar with. But now the next stitch on my needle is a purl stitch, so I have to move the yarn to the front. And purl as I usually do. Then I'm going to leave my yarn in the front, and with my needle above the yarn, pass the second stitch over the first to bind off. My next stitch is another purl stitch, so I'm going to purl again. Leave the yarn in front, and pass the second stitch over the first. Now my next stitch is a knit stitch, so move the yarn to the back, knit 1 stitch, pass the second stitch over, knit another, bind off another, move the yarn to the front, purl 1, leave the yarn in front, and bind off 1. So I'm thinking by now you see the pattern. I'm going to keep repeating these steps to bind off a few more stitches, and then I'll show you what the bind off edge should be looking like. Also, don't go anywhere because in just a minute I'll direct you to a couple more videos to make the very last stitch you bind off neat and undetectable. Alright, so here's our edge so far, and I'm sure you can see the difference between this edge and the one I showed earlier. The chain of V's is running along the outer edge of the fabric rather than rolling to the front. The edge is also pretty stretchy, just like ribbing, but you do have to make sure to keep the bind off relaxed, either by intentionally knitting loosely or by going up a needle size or 2 on the bind off row only. This is my go-to bind off for ribbing, and it has not failed me yet. So now if you're working flat, go ahead and keep binding off like this until you have 2 stitches left. If you're working in the round, bind off until you have 1 stitch left, and then meet me back here. So now I've got 2 stitches left, and if I were to just repeat what I've been doing, the last stitch has a tendency to look pretty sloppy. So in this next video, I'm going to show you how to tidy up that last stitch when working flat. If you're binding off in the round, check out this video, which will show you how to hide the jog between the beginning and end of the round. But before you go, please be sure to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.